In 2013, a seven-member group debuted under a company so small it was practically invisible in the K-pop industry. No major broadcasting connections, no massive trainee pool, no built-in audience. 12 years later, that group has addressed the United Nations General Assembly, broken records once held by the Beatles, and generated economic impact measured in billions of dollars, not for themselves alone, but for an entire country. The company behind them, HYBE, went from a modest startup to the largest entertainment corporation in South Korea's history. Other agencies watched it happen in real time. Some tried to reverse engineer the formula. None have succeeded. The question isn't whether BTS changed the music industry. That's already settled. The real question is, what exactly does HYBE have in its playbook that the rest of the industry still can't crack? There are 7 specific answers to that question, and each one explains why the gap between BTS and everyone chasing them isn't closing anytime soon.
Number 7. A global strategy from the start. Most K-pop agencies in the early 2010s followed a well-worn path. Dominate the domestic Korean market first, build a presence in Japan second, and then maybe, if things went well, test the waters in Southeast Asia or China. Western markets were barely on the radar. They were considered too difficult, too different, and frankly, too risky for Asian pop acts to penetrate in any meaningful way. Bang Si-hyuk, the founder of Big Hit Entertainment, the company that would later rebrand as HYBE, looked at that conventional wisdom and essentially decided to ignore it. When BTS debuted on June 13, 2013, Big Hit was not operating from a position of strength. The company had roughly 20 employees. It had no powerful industry connections, no relationships with major Korean broadcasting networks, and nowhere near the financial muscle of the Big Three agencies: SM Entertainment, YG Entertainment, and JYP Entertainment. In the traditional K-pop ecosystem, those disadvantages should have been fatal. But Bang Si-hyuk understood something that most of his competitors either missed or dismissed. The internet had already changed how music traveled across borders, and the agencies that figured out how to use digital platforms as primary distribution channels, not supplementary ones, would have a structural advantage that no amount of TV airtime could match. So, from the very beginning, Big Hit invested heavily in direct-to-fan digital content. BTS launched their YouTube channel and Twitter accounts before their debut, posting dance practice videos, behind-the-scenes vlogs, and personal updates that let international fans follow the group's journey in near real time. This wasn't accidental. It was a deliberate strategy built around the understanding that a fan in Sao Paulo or Chicago or Jakarta could become just as emotionally invested in BTS as a fan in Seoul, if the content was accessible and consistent. The Bangtan Bomb series became a cornerstone of this approach. These were short, informal video clips showing BTS backstage, in rehearsals, or just interacting casually with each other. By 2014, the group was uploading this content at a pace that dwarfed what other K-pop acts were producing. While competitors were still rationing behind-the-scenes footage as DVD extras or fan meeting exclusives, BTS was giving it away for free on YouTube. The result was predictable in hindsight, but radical at the time. International fan communities began forming organically, without Big Hit spending a single dollar on traditional overseas marketing. The music itself was also calibrated differently. BTS's early discography tackled themes that resonated universally: the pressures of youth, societal expectations, mental health, and the search for identity. Tracks from their School Trilogy series, Too Cool for School, ORUL 82, and School Love Affair, spoke directly to the anxieties of young people everywhere, not just Korean teenagers. This thematic approach gave BTS a lyrical identity that transcended language barriers. You didn't need to understand every Korean word to grasp the emotional core of what they were communicating. By 2014 and 2015, the strategy was already producing measurable results. BTS won the award for Best New Artist at the Melon Music Awards and began charting on Billboard's World Albums chart, a modest achievement by their later standards, but a clear signal that international traction was building. Big Hit responded not by pulling back to consolidate domestically, but by pushing further outward. The group's first concert in the United States took place in 2014 at a relatively small venue in Los Angeles. They weren't filling stadiums yet, but the fact that they were playing U.S. states just 1 year after debut spoke to the company's global ambitions. The real acceleration came with social media growth. By 2016, BTS had one of the most engaged fan communities on Twitter globally. Their interactions weren't managed by a PR team posting polished corporate updates. The members themselves were tweeting, posting selfies, sharing music recommendations, and responding to trends. This created an authenticity that algorithms rewarded and fans craved. When Billboard introduced its Social 50 chart, which measures artist activity and engagement on platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, BTS began dominating it almost immediately. They would eventually top that chart for over 200 consecutive weeks, a record that still stands. What made this global-first approach so difficult for competitors to replicate was timing. Big Hit embedded global thinking into BTS's DNA from debut. Other agencies tried to bolt on global strategies after their groups had already been shaped by domestic priorities. That's a fundamentally different proposition. When SM Entertainment pushed EXO or Super M towards Western markets, or when YG tried to position Blackpink for global audiences, those efforts came after years of operating within the traditional K-pop framework. BTS didn't have to pivot because they never committed to the old model in the first place. The company also made shrewd decisions about collaborations. Rather than chasing Western features for credibility, a common tactic, BTS built their international reputation on their own terms first. When collaborations did come, with artists like Halsey on Boy With Love in 2019 or Steve Aoki on Mic Drop Remix in 2017, they felt organic rather than desperate. The collaborations amplified existing momentum instead of trying to create it from scratch. By 2017, BTS attended the Billboard Music Awards and won Top Social Artist, beating out Justin Bieber, Selena Gomez, Ariana Grande, and Shawn Mendes. That single moment, 7 young men from a small Korean agency standing on a stage in Las Vegas holding a Billboard trophy, represented the payoff of a 4-year global strategy that most of the industry had initially dismissed as unrealistic. And here's what makes this entry just the starting point. Having a global strategy is one thing, but a strategy is only as powerful as the people who execute it. And in BTS's case, there is one force that turned strategic ambition into unstoppable reality. That force has a name, and it's up next.
Number 6. Army, a mighty force. On July 9, 2013, less than a month after BTS's debut, Big Hit Entertainment officially announced the name of the group's fanbase, ARMY, an acronym for Adorable Representative MC for Youth. At the time, it was just a name, a label for a small community of early supporters following a rookie group from an unknown agency. Nobody, not the industry, not the media, not even Big Hit themselves, could have predicted that this community would grow into one of the most organized, influential, and strategically powerful fan movements in modern entertainment history. To understand ARMY's impact, you first need to understand what makes this fan base structurally different from traditional fan communities. Most fandoms are reactive. They consume content, attend concerts, buy albums, and express enthusiasm. ARMY does all of that, but they also function as a decentralized global organization with the coordination capacity of a mid-sized marketing firm.
They run streaming campaigns with military-level precision. They organize bulk purchasing strategies across dozens of countries simultaneously. They translate content into over 40 languages within hours of release. They trend hashtags with such consistency that Twitter's own data teams have studied their behavior as a case study in platform engagement. This isn't exaggeration. The numbers back it up. When BTS released Dynamite in August 2020, the music video accumulated 101.1 million views in its first 24 hours on YouTube, setting the record for the biggest premiere in the platform's history at that time. That didn't happen because of a paid advertising blitz. It happened because ARMY coordinated a global viewing event with fan accounts across time zones organizing watch schedules, sharing streaming guides, and maintaining sustained engagement across multiple platforms simultaneously. But streaming numbers, as impressive as they are, only scratch the surface. ARMY's real power lies in its ability to influence outcomes across entirely different domains. In 2018, BTS spoke at the United Nations General Assembly as part of UNICEF's Generation Unlimited initiative. RM's speech, delivered partly in Korean and partly in English, encouraged young people around the world to find and use their voices. Within hours, ARMY had translated the speech into dozens of languages, created subtitled video clips, and pushed the content across every major social platform. The speech trended globally, and UNICEF reported a measurable spike in engagement with the Generation Unlimited campaign, directly attributable to ARMY's amplification efforts. The charitable dimension of ARMY deserves its own spotlight. This is a fandom that doesn't just support their artists, they mirror them. When BTS partnered with UNICEF in the Love Myself campaign in 2017, ARMY responded by raising funds independently. By 2022, the campaign had raised over $3.6 million, with a significant portion coming from grassroots ARMY donations. But it doesn't stop at BTS-affiliated causes. ARMY has independently organized fundraising for disaster relief, educational initiatives, and social justice movements around the world. In 2020, following the Black Lives Matter protests in the United States, BTS donated $1 million to the movement. Within 24 hours, ARMY collectively matched that donation through the hashtag #MatchAMillion campaign, organized entirely through social media, with no centralized leadership directing the effort. That last detail, no centralized leadership, is critical. ARMY operates without a formal hierarchy. There is no elected president, no official board, no organizational charter. The community self-organizes through a loose network of fan accounts, translators, project coordinators, and regional subgroups that communicate primarily through Twitter, Weverse, and various messaging platforms. This decentralized structure makes ARMY remarkably resilient. You can't disrupt the community by targeting its leadership because there is no single point of failure. It also means that ARMY's actions carry an authenticity that corporate-managed fan clubs cannot replicate. Everything they do is voluntary, passion-driven, and self-initiated. Other agencies have studied this phenomenon closely. SM Entertainment, JYP Entertainment, and YG Entertainment have all invested in building stronger digital fan communities for their artists. Platforms like Weverse, developed by HYBE itself, Bubble, and Universe, were created partly in response to the model that BTS and ARMY pioneered. But there's a fundamental problem with trying to replicate ARMY. The community wasn't engineered from the top down. It grew organically over years, fueled by genuine emotional connection between BTS and their fans. That connection was built through thousands of small, authentic interactions. BTS members posting late-night thoughts on social media, live broadcasts where they cooked, painted, or just talked to fans for hours. Honest discussions about mental health, loneliness, and self-doubt that made fans feel seen and understood. ARMY's loyalty isn't a product of marketing, it's a product of trust. And trust at that scale, built over more than a decade, is something no agency can manufacture on a timeline. The economic impact of ARMY is equally staggering. The Hyundai Research Institute estimated in 2018 that BTS generated approximately $3.6 billion annually for the South Korean economy, a figure that includes tourism, merchandise, album sales, concert revenue, and associated industries. A significant portion of that economic activity is directly driven by ARMY's purchasing and promotional power. When BTS endorses a product, whether it's Samsung smartphones, McDonald's meals, or Louis Vuitton fashion, ARMY's response is immediate and measurable. The BTS McDonald's meal, launched in nearly 50 countries in 2021, generated such intense demand that multiple locations reported selling out of menu items and packaging within days. What keeps other agencies up at night isn't just ARMY's size. Estimates put the active global community somewhere between 40 and 90 million people, depending on how you define membership. It's the quality of engagement. ARMY members don't just casually follow BTS, they invest time, energy, creativity, and resources into supporting the group and each other. They produce fan art, write analytical threads about music theory, create educational content about Korean culture, and build community support networks for members going through difficult times. It's less a fandom and more a global subculture with its own norms, language, and shared identity. And that kind of collective power doesn't just boost music charts, it transforms an artist into something much larger. When a group's name becomes synonymous with quality, influence, and cultural reach, it stops being just a musical act. It becomes a brand, and that brand, as it turns out, is worth far more than anyone initially imagined.
Number 5. BTS, a global brand powerhouse. Here's a question worth sitting with. When was the last time a music group, not an athlete, not a movie star, but a music group, had the commercial pulling power to influence the stock price of a multinational corporation just by appearing in an advertisement? Because that's exactly what BTS does, repeatedly, and the numbers behind it reveal something about their brand value that goes far beyond selling albums. Let's start with the most visible example. In April 2021, McDonald's launched the BTS meal, a limited edition menu item consisting of a 10-piece chicken McNuggets, medium fries, a Coke, and 2 dipping sauces inspired by popular McDonald's recipes in South Korea, sweet chili and Cajun. On paper, it was a fast food combo. In practice, it was a global event. The meal rolled out across nearly 50 countries, and the impact was immediate. McDonald's reported that the BTS meal was one of the most successful celebrity collaborations in the company's history, driving measurable increases in foot traffic and app downloads. In some markets, Indonesia, for instance, demand was so overwhelming that several locations had to temporarily close due to crowd congestion concerns. Fans weren't just buying the food, they were collecting the purple-branded packaging, reselling it online, and turning the entire experience into a cultural moment that generated billions of social media impressions. That single partnership illustrates a pattern that has defined BTS's brand trajectory since roughly 2017. Every collaboration they enter amplifies the partner at least as much as it amplifies BTS. And that dynamic, where the artist is the one bringing value to the brand rather than the other way around, is exceptionally rare in entertainment. Consider the Samsung partnership. Samsung became global brand ambassadors for Samsung's Galaxy line in 2020. The collaboration produced limited edition Galaxy S20 Plus and Galaxy Buds Plus devices in BTS's signature purple color, featuring custom themes and packaging inspired by popular group themes and packaging inspired by the group. The purple Galaxy S20 Plus sold out almost immediately in multiple markets. More importantly, Samsung's internal data showed that BTS-related marketing content generated engagement rates significantly higher than their standard campaigns. The partnership wasn't a one-off. It continued across subsequent Galaxy releases, indicating that Samsung viewed the relationship as a sustained strategic investment, not a novelty promotion. Then there's the luxury fashion space, where BTS's influence reshaped how the industry approaches celebrity ambassadorships.
In 2021, Louis Vuitton appointed BTS as global brand ambassadors, making them the first group rather than individual to hold that title for the French luxury house. The appointment coincided with BTS attending Louis Vuitton's Fall-Winter 2021 fashion show in Seoul, an event that generated massive online engagement and put Louis Vuitton at the center of global entertainment conversation for days. Virgil Abloh, Louis Vuitton's artistic director at the time, described BTS's style and cultural impact as a natural fit for the brand's identity. For Louis Vuitton, this wasn't about selling a few extra handbags to K-pop fans. It was about relevance, about being associated with one of the most culturally significant acts on the planet. Individual members have since expanded this footprint considerably. After the group-level Louis Vuitton partnership concluded, each member secured their own luxury ambassadorships, Jimin with Dior, V with Celine, J-Hope with Louis Vuitton as an individual ambassador, RM with Bottega Veneta, Suga with Valentino, Jungkook with Calvin Klein, and Jin with Gucci. That's 7 members across 7 major global fashion houses, a distribution of brand power that no other musical act in history has achieved simultaneously. Each of these partnerships generates its own media cycle, its own social engagement metrics, and its own commercial impact, effectively multiplying BTS's brand presence across the entire luxury industry. But BTS's brand power extends beyond consumer products and fashion. In 2021, the South Korean government appointed BTS as special presidential envoys for future generations and culture. In that capacity, they attended the 76th United Nations General Assembly, delivered a speech on sustainability and the challenges facing younger generations, and premiered a performance video filmed at the UN headquarters. The appointment wasn't symbolic. South Korea's government explicitly acknowledged BTS's ability to reach global audiences that traditional diplomatic channels could not, and the speech generated international media coverage that amplified South Korea's soft power messaging far beyond what any government campaign could achieve independently. The tourism impact alone has been quantified. A study by the Korea Tourism Organization found that roughly 1 in every 13 foreign tourists visiting South Korea cited BTS as a factor in their decision to travel to the country. The Hyundai Research Institute's widely cited 2018 report estimated BTS's annual economic contribution to South Korea at approximately $3.6 billion, a figure that encompassed direct revenue streams like concert tickets and merchandise, but also indirect effects like tourism spending, increased exports of Korean cultural products, and heightened international interest in Korean language study. Enrollment in Korean language courses worldwide saw notable increases correlated with BTS's rising global profile, with institutions like the King Sejong Institute reporting significant upticks in student interest. For HYBE, this brand dimension transforms BTS from a revenue-generating musical act into a diversified commercial platform. Every endorsement deal, every brand partnership, every governmental appointment, and every cultural initiative that BTS participates in feeds back into HYBE's ecosystem, generating licensing revenue, elevating the company's profile in investor relations, and creating opportunities for cross-platform content. When HYBE went public on the Korea Exchange in October 2020, the company's valuation surged past $8 billion on its first day of trading, making it the largest entertainment IPO in South Korean history. Analysts noted that a significant portion of that valuation was tied directly to BTS's brand equity, not just their music catalog, but the totality of their commercial relationships and cultural influence. This is the layer that separates BTS from virtually every other act in the industry. Plenty of artists sell records, some attract endorsement deals, a few become cultural icons, but almost none of them function as an integrated brand ecosystem where music, fashion, diplomacy, tourism, and corporate strategy all intersect and reinforce each other simultaneously. And the engine powering all of that, the reason the brand works at every level, comes down to something deceptively simple: the people behind it. Not as a collective, but as 7 individuals, each bringing something irreplaceable to the equation.
Number 4. 7 members, 7 unique strengths. There's a structural problem that almost every large musical group eventually faces: concentration of value. 1 or 2 members become the public face, the commercial engine, the reason people buy tickets, and the rest gradually fade into supporting roles. It happened with the Supremes. It happened with Destiny's Child. It's a pattern so common in the music industry that most agencies plan for it from the beginning, quietly investing more resources into whoever tests best with audiences. HYBE, with BTS, did something different. They cultivated a model where all 7 members carry independent weight, and the data proves that this wasn't an accident. It was architecture. Start with RM Kim Namjoon. He joined Big Hit Entertainment as a teenager, recruited after Bang Si-hyuk heard his underground rap recordings. RM was the first member selected, and the rest of the group was essentially built around him. His role extends far beyond being the leader in name. RM is the group's primary spokesperson in English language contexts, having taught himself the language largely through watching the American sitcom Friends. He has writing credits on over 170 songs registered with the Korea Music Copyright Association. His solo work, particularly his 2022 album Indigo, showcased his artistic range, featuring collaborations with artists as diverse as Erykah Badu, Anderson .Paak, and Eugene of Cherry Filter. RM is also an established figure in the contemporary art world, frequently visiting galleries and museums, and his influence has been credited with driving increased interest in Korean contemporary art among younger global audiences. Suga Min Youngi brings a different dimension entirely. Before joining Big Hit, he worked as an underground rapper in Daegu under the name Gloss. His production skills are among the most technically accomplished in K-pop. Suga has produced tracks not only for BTS, but also for artists outside the group, including IU's 2017 hit 8, which he co-wrote and produced, and it debuted at number 2 on the JN Digital chart. His August D solo project, spanning 3 mixtapes released between 2016 and 2023, explored themes of mental health, economic anxiety, and personal history with a rawness that's uncommon in mainstream K-pop. His candid public discussions about his own experiences with depression and social anxiety resonated deeply with fans and helped normalize mental health conversations in South Korean public discourse, where stigma around those topics remains significant. J-Hope, Young Hoseok, is often described as BTS's best dancer, and his credentials support that reputation. Before joining Big Hit, he was already an award-winning street dancer, having won a national dance competition in South Korea in 2008. His solo album Jack in the Box, released in 2022, debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200, and he became the first South Korean solo artist to headline a main stage at Lollapalooza, performing at the Chicago Festival in July 2022. His performance drew an estimated audience of over 100,000 and was widely covered by international music press. J-Hope's energy and stage command function as BTS's live performance backbone, his choreographic precision sets the standard that the group's famously synchronized routines are built around. Park Jimin, holds a set of records that illustrate his individual commercial power. His solo debut album Face, released in March 2023, debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, making him the highest-charting Korean solo artist on that chart at the time. His single, Like Crazy, debuted at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, making Jimin the first Korean solo artist to top that chart. Trained in contemporary dance at Busan High School of Arts, Jimin's movement style, fluid, emotive, and technically grounded, gives BTS performances a visual texture that contrasts with the group's hip-hop foundations. His personal social media engagement consistently ranks among the highest of any individual celebrity globally, with single posts routinely generating millions of interactions. Kim Taehyung occupies a unique position as both a vocalist and a cultural figure whose appeal extends deeply into the fashion and visual arts space. His solo debut album Layover, released in September 2023, debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200. V's baritone vocal color is distinct within BTS's lineup, deeper and warmer than the group's other vocalists, giving songs an additional tonal layer. His influence in fashion is independently significant. He has been credited with driving sold-out sales of items he wears in public appearances, a phenomenon fans call the V effect. His appointment as a Celine Global Ambassador in 2022 solidified his standing as one of the most watched figures in men's fashion globally. Jin Kim Seokjin is the group's eldest member, and his role within BTS's dynamic is both stabilizing and commercially potent. His solo single, The Astronaut, released in October 2022 and co-written with Coldplay, debuted at number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. Jin's visual appeal has been a consistent topic of public and media attention. He was named the most handsome man in the world by multiple international polling outlets, though more substantively. His acting training and comedic personality have made him one of the most recognizable faces in Korean entertainment. After completing his mandatory military service in 2024, his return generated a media cycle that trended globally across multiple platforms. Jungkook is often called the group's Golden Magne youngest member due to his proficiency across singing, dancing, and performing. His solo single, 7, featuring Lotto debuted at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in July 2023 and spent consecutive weeks atop the chart. He performed at the opening ceremony of the 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar, singing Dreamers before an estimated global television audience of over 1 billion viewers, making it one of the most watched solo musical performances in history. His solo album Golden, released in November 2023, debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200. What makes this 7-member architecture so strategically valuable is redundancy in the best sense. If one member enters military service, pursues solo projects, or steps back temporarily, the remaining members continue to generate cultural and commercial momentum independently. HYBE never placed all of its weight on a single pillar. Each member is a self-sustaining brand with their own audience, their own artistic identity, and their own market influence. Together, they create a collective that is greater than the sum of its parts, but individually, each one would be a headline act at any other agency. And when you take that kind of individual power and multiply it by 7, you don't just get a successful group. You get something that fundamentally changes how the world looks at the company behind them. Number 3. BTS bolsters HYBE's global standing. In 2012, if you had walked into any entertainment industry conference in Los Angeles, London, or Tokyo and mentioned Big Hit Entertainment, you would have been met with blank stares. The company was, by every measurable standard, a minor player. It had been founded in 2005 by Bang Si-hyuk, a songwriter and producer who had previously worked under Park Jin-young at JYP Entertainment. Big Hit's early roster was thin. The company had managed a few artists with limited commercial traction, and its financial position was precarious enough that the debut of BTS in 2013 was essentially a make-or-break proposition. If BTS failed, there was no safety net. No second group waiting in the pipeline. No deep reserves to absorb the loss. BTS did not fail. And the trajectory of what happened next didn't just change the company, it redrew the map of the global entertainment industry. By 2017, BTS had one top social artist at the Billboard Music Awards, appeared on major American television programs, and established a fan base that spanned every inhabited continent. Big Hit's revenue that year was approximately 92.4 billion Korean won, roughly $82 million US. For context, that figure was still significantly smaller than the revenues of SM Entertainment or YG Entertainment at the time. But the growth curve was unmistakable. In 2018, revenue nearly doubled to 214 billion won. By 2019, it reached 587 billion won. The company wasn't just growing, it was accelerating at a rate that had no precedent in Korean entertainment. What BTS's success gave Big Hit, and later HYBE, after the corporate rebranding in March 2021, was something more valuable than revenue alone: legitimacy. Before BTS, No Korean entertainment company had demonstrated the ability to build a globally dominant act from scratch without relying on established Western industry infrastructure. SM Entertainment had achieved significant international presence with groups like EXO and later NCT, but its model still relied heavily on regional Asian markets, particularly Japan and China. YG had Big Bang and later Blackpink, but even Blackpink's Western breakthrough came partly through a partnership with Interscope Records, a major American label. BTS's global ascent was fundamentally different. It was built primarily on digital direct-to-fan engagement, organic social media growth, and a fan community that did much of the promotional heavy lifting that would traditionally require a Western label's marketing department. This distinction matters enormously in corporate terms. When HYBE went public on the Korea Exchange on October 15, 2020, its shares opened at 270,000 won, more than double the initial public offering price of 135,000 won. The company's market capitalization briefly exceeded 11 trillion won, making it the most valuable entertainment company in South Korean history on its first day of trading. Analysts at major financial institutions, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, NH Investment and Securities, published reports attributing a substantial portion of that valuation to BTS's global brand equity and the demonstrated scalability of HYBE's artist management model. But the IPO was only one dimension of how BTS elevated HYBE's global standing. The company used the credibility and capital generated by BTS's success to execute a series of strategic acquisitions that transformed it from a single artist agency into a diversified entertainment conglomerate. In 2019, Big Hit acquired Source Music, the agency behind the girl group G-FARIND. In 2020, it acquired Pledis Entertainment, home to 17 and NUST. The same year, it brought KOZ Entertainment, founded by Korean rapper Zico, into its portfolio. Each of these acquisitions added roster depth and market coverage, but they were all made possible by the financial foundation and industry credibility that BTS had built. The biggest move came in April 2021, when HYBE completed the acquisition of Ithaca Holdings, the American media company founded by Scooter Braun that managed artists including Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, Demi Lovato, and J Balvin. The deal was valued at approximately $1.05 billion and gave HYBE direct operational presence in the American entertainment market. This was not a licensing deal or a distribution partnership. A Korean entertainment company had bought one of the most prominent artist management firms in the United States. The acquisition would have been unthinkable without BTS. Not just because of the financial resources their success generated, but because BTS had already proven that a HYBE-managed act could compete at the highest level globally. That proof of concept gave the Ithaca acquisition strategic logic in the eyes of investors, partners, and the acquired company's own artists. HYBE's corporate structure itself reflects BTS's foundational role. The company reorganized into a multi-label system, with sub-labels including Bigot Music, home to BTS, Belift Lab, home to HYBE, ADER, home to New Jeans, Source Music, Pledis Entertainment, and others. That decentralizes creative decisions while centralizing business infrastructure. This model was directly inspired by the lessons learned managing BTS. Give artists creative autonomy while providing corporate-level support in areas like global distribution, platform development, and brand partnerships. The development of Weverse, HYBE's proprietary fan community and content platform, is another direct outgrowth of the BTS experience. Launched in 2019, Weverse was initially built to serve BTS and ARMY, providing a dedicated space for fan communication, content sharing, and commerce. It has since expanded to host artist communities for groups across multiple agencies, including artists outside the HYBE ecosystem. By 2023, Weverse reported over 100 million registered users globally. The platform generates revenue through advertising, premium content, and integrated merchandise sales, and it represents HYBE's ambition to control the infrastructure of fan engagement rather than renting it from third-party platforms like YouTube or Instagram. That ambition, building an owned and operated platform with global scale, was seeded entirely by the patterns of fan behavior that BTS and ARMY established years earlier. The net effect is that HYBE, a company that was nearly invisible a little over a decade ago, is now routinely discussed alongside the largest entertainment companies in the world. Not just in Korea. Globally. Its executives sit in meetings with counterparts at Universal Music Group, Walt Disney Company, and Sony. Its strategic decisions are covered by the Financial Times and Bloomberg. Its artist roster spans continents and genres in ways that no Korean company has previously achieved. All of that traces back to 7 individuals who debuted in a small practice room in Seoul. And if the scale of what they've done for HYBE's position is impressive, the reason no one else has been able to duplicate it is even more compelling. Number 2. BTS's strength is irreplaceable. Every few months, the K-pop industry debuts a new group designed to be the next global phenomenon. The training is rigorous. The production budgets are enormous. The visual presentations are polished to a mirror finish. And yet, despite all of that investment and precision, none of them have come close to replicating what BTS has built. Not because the talent isn't there, it often is. Not because the music isn't good, it frequently is. The reason is that what makes BTS irreplaceable isn't any single ingredient. It's the accumulation of time, circumstance, authenticity, and shared experience that cannot be manufactured no matter how large the budget or how sophisticated the strategy. Start with the timeline. BTS debuted on June 13, 2013, and spent roughly 4 years in a state that the K-pop industry calls growing a fanbase incrementally, releasing music that received critical attention but not mainstream commercial dominance, and performing at venues that were a fraction of the size they would later fill. That period, 2013 to 2017, is often glossed over in retrospectives, but it is foundational to everything that followed. During those years, BTS and ARMY grew together. Fans who discovered the group in 2014 or 2015 weren't jumping onto a winning bandwagon. They were investing emotionally in a group that was still fighting for recognition, still being underestimated by industry gatekeepers, still proving itself against better-funded and better-connected competitors. That shared struggle created a bond between artist and audience that is qualitatively different from what happens when fans discover a group that's already successful. It's the difference between supporting a team through a championship run from the first game of the season and buying a jersey after they've already won the title. Then there's the documented history. BTS is one of the most thoroughly recorded musical acts in history, and they did most of that recording themselves. From the earliest Bangtan bombs to the multi-season reality series Bon Voyage, from Run BTS episodes to the Burn the Stage documentary film, there exists an almost continuous visual and textual record of who these 7 people are, how they interact, how they've changed, and what they've endured together. That archive serves a critical function. It makes the group's authenticity verifiable. A new fan can go back and watch footage from 2013 and see the same interpersonal dynamics, the same humor, the same genuine affection between members that they see in content from 2023. That kind of consistency across a decade of public life is extraordinarily difficult to fake and even more difficult to replicate with a newly formed group. The chemistry between the 7 members is another element that defies replication. Group chemistry in K-pop is often curated. Trainees are selected and combined based on complementary skills, visual profiles, and market positioning. BTS was assembled through a similar process, but what emerged over years of shared experience transcended the original casting logic. RM has spoken publicly about the tensions and growing pains the group experienced in its early years, including moments when members considered leaving. Those conflicts and the fact that they were worked through rather than papered over produced a group dynamic that fans perceive as genuine, because it is. The members' relationships were forged under real pressure, financial uncertainty, industry dismissal, grueling schedules, and the psychological weight of representing an underdog company with no margin for failure. That kind of shared crucible creates bonds that are visible to audiences and that no amount of corporate team-building exercises can substitute. Consider also the achievement portfolio. BTS's list of accomplishments functions as a compounding asset. Each milestone reinforces the significance of the ones that came before and raises the threshold for what would constitute a meaningful rival. They are the first Korean act to top the Billboard Hot 100. The first to perform solo at a major American stadium, Citi Field in New York, in October 2018, which sold out in minutes. The first to sell out multiple nights at venues like Wembley Stadium in London and the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. The first Korean act to receive a Grammy nomination. The first to speak at the United Nations General Assembly. Each of these firsts carries historical weight that cannot be retroactively claimed by another group. Being the second Korean act to top the Hot 100 is a significant achievement, but it doesn't carry the same cultural narrative as being the first. BTS's position as a pioneer, the act that proved Korean pop music could compete at the absolute highest level of global entertainment, is permanently embedded in the historical record. Fan loyalty adds another layer of irreplicability. ARMY's commitment to BTS has been tested repeatedly and has held firm every time. When BTS announced in June 2022 that they would be focusing on solo projects while members fulfilled their mandatory military service obligations, the announcement generated significant media speculation about whether the group's commercial viability would survive the hiatus. ARMY's response was decisive. Solo releases from every member charted globally. Jungkook's 7 and Jimin's Like Crazy both reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Concert viewing parties for past performances drew massive online audiences. Album sales remained robust. The fanbase didn't just survive the hiatus, it demonstrated that its loyalty was unconditional, rooted in a relationship with the group that transcended any single promotional cycle or content release schedule. For competing agencies watching this play out, the message was clear: you can't build this kind of fan commitment with a 3-year development program and a well-produced debut. There is also the intangible but undeniable cultural resonance. BTS arrived at a specific moment in history when social media had democratized content distribution, but before the market was saturated with groups pursuing the same global strategy. They filled a space that, in retrospect, was waiting to be filled. Young people around the world wanted artists who spoke honestly about the pressures of modern life, who didn't hide behind manufactured personas, and who represented a culture that the Western entertainment mainstream had largely overlooked. BTS met that moment. And moments, by definition, don't repeat. The next globally dominant Korean act, whenever it emerges, will succeed in a different cultural context, under different conditions, with a different audience dynamic. It will not be a second BTS, because the conditions that produced BTS no longer exist. All of this, the history, the chemistry, the achievements, the loyalty, the timing combines into something that functions less like a competitive advantage and more like a natural phenomenon. You can study it. You can admire it. But you cannot will it into existence a second time. And for HYBE, that irreplicability isn't just a source of pride. It's the foundation of an entire corporate strategy, one that treats BTS not as an artist on a roster, but as something far more consequential. Number 1. BTS is a strategic asset for HYBE. In the language of corporate finance, an asset is something that generates value over time. A factory, a patent portfolio, a piece of real estate in a prime location. These are the things that analysts evaluate when determining what a company is worth. In the entertainment industry, artists are rarely discussed in those terms. Their talent, their creative partners, their revenue generators for a contract cycle. But BTS occupies a category that most entertainment companies have never encountered. They are a strategic asset in the fullest corporate sense of the term, and HYBE's entire organizational architecture reflects that reality. To understand what this means in practice, look at HYBE's financial disclosures. When the company filed for its IPO in 2020, its prospectus identified BTS-related revenue as the single largest component of its income. In the fiscal year ending 2019, BTS accounted for approximately 97% of Big Hit Entertainment's total revenue. That figure included album sales, concert revenue, merchandise, licensing fees, and content production income. 97%. For any other company in any other industry, that level of concentration on a single asset would be flagged as an existential risk, and analysts did raise that concern. But HYBE's response was not to diminish BTS's role. It was to build an entire corporate ecosystem around BTS's value in a way that diversified the company while keeping BTS at its strategic center. The multi-label structure that HYBE adopted is a direct expression of this thinking. Rather than treating BTS as one act among many on a shared roster, HYBE positioned Bigot Music, the sub-label that manages BTS, as the flagship of a broader portfolio. Other labels within the HYBE system, Pledis Entertainment with 17, Belift Lab with HYBE, Odd Air with New Jeans, Source Music with Ellie Seraphim, each operate with creative independence, but they all benefit from the infrastructure, global relationships, and industry credibility that BTS's success established. When HYBE negotiates distribution deals, secures platform partnerships, or pitches brand collaborations for its newer acts, the conversation invariably begins with BTS as the proof of concept. The company's ability to develop and manage a globally dominant act is its most persuasive credential, and that credential has a name. The intellectual property dimension is equally significant. BTS's catalog, spanning dozens of albums, hundreds of songs, thousands of hours of video content, multiple documentary films, and a vast archive of digital interactions, constitutes an IP library that generates revenue across an unusually wide range of channels. Music streaming royalties represent one layer. Synchronization licensing, placing BTS songs in commercials, films, and television programs, represents another. The content library feeds Weverse, HYBE's proprietary platform, which monetizes through advertising, subscriptions, and integrated commerce. And the characters and visual motifs associated with BTS, particularly the BT21 line developed in collaboration with Line Friends, generate merchandise revenue that operates independently of the group's active promotional schedule. BT21 deserves specific attention as a case study in how HYBE has monetized BTS's brand beyond traditional entertainment revenue streams. Launched in 2017, BT21 is a set of character intellectual properties, including KY, RJ, Shuki, Mang, Chimmy, Tata, Seo Kwai, and Van, each designed by a BTS member. The characters are licensed for use on a staggering range of products: clothing, stationery, home goods, mobile accessories, food packaging, and digital stickers. Line Friends reported that BT21 merchandise generated over $250 million in revenue within its first year. The characters have their own social media presence, their own animated content, and their own retail locations in cities including Seoul, Tokyo, New York, and Los Angeles. This is IP that exists because of BTS, but generates revenue independently of BTS's music activities, a textbook example of asset diversification built on a single foundational brand. The military service period, which saw all 7 members enlist between 2022 and 2023, with the final members completing service by June 2025, provided an unintentional but highly informative stress test of BTS's value as a long-term asset. During the period when the group was not actively promoting as a 7-member unit, HYBE's stock price experienced volatility, and analysts closely monitored whether the company could sustain its valuation without active BTS group activities. The answer was nuanced. Solo releases from individual members performed strongly on global charts. Catalog streaming numbers for the group's existing discography remained robust, and merchandise and licensing revenue continued at significant levels. The market learned that BTS's asset value was not purely dependent on new group content. The existing body of work, brand partnerships, and IP portfolio continued generating returns even during a period of reduced group activity. HYBE's corporate communications increasingly reflect the language of asset management when discussing BTS. Earnings calls reference artist IP value, catalog monetization, and long-term brand equity, terminology borrowed from industries like film studios and publishing houses, where the value of a creative asset is measured in decades rather than album cycles. This framing is deliberate. HYBE is signaling to investors and partners that BTS should be understood not as a musical act with a finite commercial lifespan, but as an enduring brand with multiple revenue dimensions and a compounding cultural legacy. The global reunification of BTS, with all 7 members completing military service and returning to group activities, represents what HYBE's strategic planning has been oriented toward since the hiatus began. The company has positioned this moment not merely as a comeback in the traditional K-pop sense, but as a reactivation of its most valuable strategic asset. New music, new tours, new content, new brand partnerships. All planned with the understanding that BTS's return to full group activity will generate a surge of commercial and cultural momentum that flows through every level of HYBE's corporate structure. And this is the core truth that sits at the center of everything we've discussed across these 7 points. BTS is not simply a group that HYBE manages. They are the reason HYBE exists in its current form. Every acquisition, every platform, every sub-label, every international office, every investor relationship, all of it traces back to what 7 young men from a small, underfunded agency built through talent, authenticity, and an unbreakable connection with millions of people around the world. Other agencies can study the playbook. They can invest in global strategies, cultivate fan communities, diversify brand partnerships, and assemble groups with exceptional talent. But replicating the full weight of what BTS represents, the history, the trust, the cultural timing, the irreplaceable chemistry, and the strategic depth remains, as of today, a challenge that no one in the industry has solved. So there they are, 7 secrets that, when you lay them out together, paint a picture of something the entertainment industry has never quite seen before and may not see again for a very long time. We started at number 7 with a global strategy that was embedded into BTS's DNA from day one. While other agencies were still treating international markets as an afterthought, a nice bonus if it happened, but never the primary objective. Big Hit Entertainment was building its entire operational model around the idea that a group from Seoul could connect with audiences in every corner of the world. That bet, made at a time when the company had fewer than 24 employees and virtually no industry leverage, turned out to be one of the most consequential strategic decisions in modern entertainment history. At number 6, we looked at ARMY, a fan community that operates less like a traditional fandom and more like a self-organizing global movement. Their ability to coordinate across time zones, languages, and cultural boundaries gives BTS a promotional and commercial force multiplier that no marketing budget can replicate. When ARMY decides to rally behind a release, a cause, or a moment, the results show up in Billboard charts, social media metrics, charitable donation totals, and even the stock performance of partner companies. The fact that this community does all of this voluntarily, without centralized leadership or corporate direction, makes it one of the most remarkable collective phenomena in the history of popular culture. Number 5 revealed the sheer scale of BTS's brand power, a commercial footprint that stretches from McDonald's drive-thrus to the halls of the United Nations, from Samsung product launches to Louis Vuitton runways. BTS doesn't just endorse products. They transform the commercial landscape of every partnership they enter. And with each member now holding individual ambassadorships with major global fashion houses, the group's brand presence has multiplied into 7 parallel streams of cultural and commercial influence, each reinforcing the others. At number 4, we examined the 7 members themselves, each one a self-sustaining force with distinct artistic identities, solo achievements, and market appeal. RM's intellectual depth and songwriting authority. Suga's production mastery and unflinching honesty about mental health. J-Hope's elite dance credentials and history-making solo performances. Jimin's chart-topping solo debut and mesmerizing stage presence. V's genre-defying artistry and fashion influence. Jin's unique cultural footprint and emotional resonance. Jungkook's record-shattering solo career and a World Cup performance watched by over 1 billion people. Any single one of them would be the centerpiece of another agency's entire roster. HYBE has all 7. Number 3 showed how BTS's success didn't just build a fan base, It built a corporation. HYBE's transformation from a small, financially precarious agency into a multi-billion-dollar global entertainment conglomerate is a direct consequence of what BTS achieved. The IPO. The acquisition of Ithaca Holdings. The multi-label structure. The development of Weverse as a global platform. The partnerships with major Western entertainment companies. None of these milestones would have been possible without BTS serving as both the financial engine and the credibility proof that made investors, partners, and acquired companies say yes. At number 2, we confronted the uncomfortable truth that keeps competing agencies awake at night. BTS's strength is irreplaceable. Not because other groups lack talent. Many are exceptionally talented. But because the specific combination of shared history, organic fan growth, verified authenticity, pioneering achievements, unconditional fan loyalty, and cultural timing that defines BTS cannot be assembled through any amount of investment or planning. The conditions that produced BTS were unique to a specific moment in history, and that moment has passed. Whatever comes next will be something different. It will not and cannot be a second BTS. And at number 1, we arrived at the strategic truth that underpins everything else. BTS is not just an artist on HYBE's roster. They're the foundational asset around which the entire company has been built. Their music catalog, their brand equity, their intellectual property portfolio, their cultural influence, and their long-term relevance in the global market represent a concentration of value that shapes HYBE's corporate strategy, investor relations, and competitive positioning at every level. 7 points. 7 dimensions of a phenomenon that, taken together, explain why the gap between BTS and every other act in the industry isn't a gap that effort alone can close. It's structural, it's historical, and it's deeply, authentically human. The question we asked at the beginning was simple. What does HYBE have in its playbook that the rest of the industry still can't crack? The answer, it turns out, isn't a playbook at all. It's 7 people who built something real with millions of others who believed in them before the world did. So, do you think BTS is the most important asset in HYBE's history? Is there any group that could realistically challenge the position they've built? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this breakdown gave you a new perspective on what makes BTS's situation truly unique, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. We'll see you in the next one.